Good afternoon to members of Maine Listings. My name is Brent Adams, and I'm a trainer with Cotality, and I'm here to tell you all about Realist, your tax and public record system, brought to you by Cotality. And it's a system that also integrates with your Flexmls listing system too on a number of levels. So without further ado, let's start going through a little bit of the information that I have to show you today about Realist in this PowerPoint. For those of you who've used Realist for a long time, and Realist has been in use with Maine Listings for quite a while, one of the newest features that we've added over the past couple of years is our new dashboard. And this dashboard is designed to do a couple of different things for you. Number one, it's designed to give you some quick stats in the area that you're most interested in searching in. The number of closed sales, number of pending sales, active listings, average sale prices, and things of that nature. It's also going to give you a market temperature. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? There's also a few other things that it'll do for you as well that help you within the Realist system itself. You've got the ability to search very quickly by address from this dashboard. You've got the ability to save properties, and they will show up here on this dashboard so you can access them quickly. Even if you haven't saved properties, and this is one of my favorite features about the dashboard, you've been looking at properties, get logged out of Realist, can't find them anymore, you didn't save them, you didn't save that search. Your last viewed properties are going to be available for you. So up to about a dozen of your last viewed properties are going to be available for you, whether or not you've saved them or not. And the last thing that this dashboard will do for you is it does give you access to some good property intelligence, both from CoreLogic and also from some other sources as well, some other real estate news sources too. So we'll have articles for you and things like that. They're going to discuss what's going on nationally in the scene as well. But when you get into Realist itself, and you might notice on the image that I've got on the top of this PowerPoint, there's a search area. And you might also notice at the top of that image, it says dashboard and search. That's how you toggle between the dashboard and the search section. We'll go over that too. But when you do get to searching, that's where you get your business done in Realist. And the interface is very easy. So in that top kind of left image, what you're seeing is a search section on the left, where you can search for properties based on who owns them, where they're located, how much they sold for, whether or not they're in foreclosure, physical characteristics, all kinds of things. And when you return properties that match those characteristics, or you find properties that match the characteristics you entered into the search boxes, they get returned in two places. One is in the form of those push pins on the map, and the colors will indicate their listing status. And then you'll also see them down here on the grid, where they'll be in a nice one-line view. You can toggle over to a card view, and you can kind of sort through all the data that you see about those properties. Now, clicking in a number of different areas is going to get you to a property detail report, and that's what you see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. That's the flagship report in Realist. It's going to tell you who owns the property, where it's located, when it's sold, mortgages, foreclosures, sales, physical characteristics, estimated values, among other things. And if you want to find out more information about the other properties surrounding this area or surrounding this home, we've got a lot of other reports to show you too, comparables, market trends, neighbors, and we'll go through each and every one of those individually. So Realist takes maps. We use Google Maps, by the way. We take property data that we have collected from recorded documents, that we have collected from your county assessor's offices and all other sources. We take your listing data, information that you as agents input into your listings in Flex on a daily basis, and we even take third-party data, information about schools, businesses, US Census data. All of this is public records data that we put together into one nice little package called Realist, and we make things searchable for you, and we give you the ability to print out this information, share this information with your clients. So it's designed not only to educate you, but also educate your clients on information about properties and neighborhoods in your area too. As far as the data that we bring in to Realist, taxes and assessments are updated annually in the state of Maine. So once a year, you'll see those updated. Now, transactions like sales, mortgages, and foreclosures, those are going to be updated much more often than yearly. It's going to depend on which county that we're talking about for me to be able to tell you exactly how often each and every one of these counties update. So I'll show you how to check how recent the data is when it comes to sales, mortgages, and foreclosures inside Realist itself. We can even show you, using some indicators, using some of our rules, when properties are currently owned by a bank or a REO, real estate owned, or when properties have been sold by one of those entities to a third party, because a lot of times hand in hand with foreclosures, those are what we call distressed sales, and you'll be able to find those if you need to as well. As for your listing data, that's brought in on a regular basis, daily. So you're going to get things like your photos, your statuses, your dates, your prices. That's current listings and historical listings will be brought in from Flex into Realist. You can have all that information in one place. The other thing I'll point out that we do is the information that each and every one of you input into your listings does get brought into Realist, and we display it right alongside the information we get from the tax roll from the county for those exact same properties. That can lead to discrepancies. What you say about a property as the listing agent may not necessarily be what the county says about a property. If someone didn't get the proper permits when they put an addition on a property, those could cause those kind of discrepancies, or just simple user error. But we'll show you those discrepancies. We don't tell you who's right or who's wrong. We leave it up to your discretion as to the value you feel comfortable using. And we'll also bring in all the photos for your listings too. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the maps in Realist today, and some of the things that I think make the map really useful is the ability to search using the map, and that starts with our parcel boundaries that we place over the interactive Google Maps. So all you need to be able to do to find a property is to be able to physically find it on a map. You don't need an address or a name if you don't want to. You can click on the rooftop of that home and find out more information about it. Now, those boundaries are updated annually, as are boundaries for most everything else that we're going to overlay onto the maps today, with the exception of flood zones. Those are updated monthly from FEMA. And we can also show you where points of interest are from Google, where the schools, where the medical facilities, where the entertainment places, where are the restaurants. I'll be able to show you where all your listings are: active, expired, sold, pending. We can even show you trends on the map too. Where are areas of higher sales activity, or lower sales activity? And these will be shown in heat maps, warmer colors showing higher levels, cooler colors showing those lower levels too. The other thing to know about Realist that people don't always realize, because most people just come into Realist looking for one property or looking for information about one property, but it really is a great resource to do some marketing. You have access to every single parcel in the entire state of Maine. That's a big marketing opportunity for you. Properties that have never been listed potentially. So we allow you to print out mailing labels. We allow you to search for properties that are or are not owner occupied. We allow you to search for properties that have or haven't sold in the recent past. And we also scrub our database of addresses against the do not mail list. So people who don't want to be reached by public records data with direct mail solicitation will be able to be filtered out of your mailings. We also have all the information that's necessary to make sure that you can reach the whose addresses, whether or not they live in these properties or not, can be reached. Lastly, I do always get a lot of questions about whether or not there's a Realist app, and the answer to that is no. But Realist is a responsive design, so it will work on a phone. It will work on a tablet. It will work on an iOS device, on an Android device. So all of those will work regardless of what screen you're working on. Realist is going to work for you. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and get out of this PowerPoint, and let's go ahead and get into Realist and show you a little bit more information about what you can do in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to start here in Flex, because the easiest way to get into Realist is through Flex. However, there are a couple of different ways to get into Realist from Flex. Number one, and I think this is one of the most popular, if you click on a listing, and I'm just going into a hot sheet here, but if you go ahead and click on a listing and you go into the details for that listing by clicking on the MLS number, what you're going to see up here at the very top is, first of all, there's a Realist tax info button. And sometimes these are hidden, I find, here in Flex. Sometimes they're under the more section. Sometimes you may even get a couple of additional links to Realist too. And it's these ones that you see kind of with the little red and gray. That's our old logo. That's our old CoreLogic logo, which we used to be CoreLogic. We're now Cotality. But property map, neighborhood profile, and Realist tax info will all take you to some instance of information about this particular property. What I'll do is I'll click on Realist tax info first. It takes you to this intermediary landing page first. This is effectively a property detail report, what I talked about in our PowerPoint. It's got everything you need to know about the property, but you're really not in Realist yet. To get into Realist, although once you're here, by the way, you can print this, you can copy and paste what you need, but you've got various ways to actually launch into Realist if you want to. The easiest of which is clicking on Launch Realist. Now, you're actually going to go into Realist itself with all the tools and associated information that's going to be included inside of Realist. But here's what a property detail report looks like inside of Realist itself. Kind of a better look, a lot of other tabs available for you, among other things. Now, a way to bypass all of this, I'll close out of here, by the way, and go back into Flex, is under the More button, there's a Realist Property Map button. Click on that one. Goes right past the property detail report and just simply maps the property, shows you where it is on the map, gives it to you down here on the grid. And this again is your search section that I was kind of showing you earlier on that PowerPoint. Okay, last time we'll close out. There is another one here. It is called Neighborhood Profile. We'll get into that. It's a report that's in Realist. This will directly link you into it if you want. But no matter where you are in Flex, you can always click on the menu button up here in the upper left-hand corner. And then down here a little bit lower, there is a taxes section. And one of the things, well, the only thing underneath it is Realist Tax Info. When I click on that, that brings me into Realist without the benefit of coming in from a listing. So where does it drop me? Right here on the dashboard that we talked about earlier in the PowerPoint too. So let's just go over this dashboard really quickly before we get into doing some searching. Number one, speaking of which, searching, you can do a quick search from right here. We also auto-complete the information that you place into this box. So I'm finding any properties that begin with the address number 123. Here's your buyer's market versus seller's market, cooler colors versus warmer colors. Here's your quick stats. Understand that we're only showing you stats for the county in which you've been recently searching or the county that you've selected. And I'm going to be doing searches in Cumberland County, Maine today, but you can again see all the stats and where they're trending right now. Here's a rolling 12-month period of your MLS average sale prices, change in MLS sales activity. Now, if I want to change this county, I can do it right here. Again, this is for Cumberland. But if I want to change this county or I want to add a county like York County, come in here and hit apply. And now I've got 2 counties worth of information. So I can compare counties back and forth. Where are we doing more sales? Where are we selling properties at a higher level? But really, I'm just going to be kind of focusing on Cumberland, Maine here, kind of in the Portland area, since I think that's probably an area that you all are very interested in. And then we'll move down a little bit further. Here's where you get into things like my saved properties. So if I've saved a property, if I've starred a property, and I'll show you how you can do that, you can toggle through them right here, see the basic card for them, and even go right to them simply by clicking on them here. Additionally, if you've saved a search, all your saved searches are available down here. If you've simply viewed a property but haven't saved it, as I mentioned, they're all here. So I love this. You got lost, you got logged out, you didn't save that property on 29 Kellogg Street. Here, you can find it again very easily if you need to. By the way, all these things can be moved too. There's 3 dots next to each and every one of these widgets. You can drag them. So if you want one on one side and another on the other, these things will kind of move independently of each other if you'd like to. You can even hide them. Click on Turn Off widget, and all of a sudden my Saved Searches widget goes away. By the way to bring those back, up here, top right, Manage Widgets. I turned off which one? My Saved Searches. There you go. Turn it back on right there. Hit Save Changes, and it's back again. Lastly, there is also Property Market Insights. This is information from Cotality about different information that we can kind of give you. Looks like there's nothing in there at the moment, but hopefully we'll be loading that up soon. But here we've got things like industry news from Inman, or if you want to change your source, Housing Wire, or information from the Real Estate Times or Realty Times or anything else, industry news from everywhere. So you can scroll through these and kind of read what's going on nationally at a real estate level. That's your dashboard. Now, toggling over into Realist itself to do some searches is very easy. You use the search button up here at the very top. And let's just go over the quick navigation about the search section. So search on the left, map on the right, grid on the bottom. But you can kind of make this do whatever you'd like. If you've done some searching and you'd like to hide this search section, simply click the arrows here and it collapses the search bar. Want to make Realist one big map? Click and drag here on the gray bar, and you can make Realist one big map or one big grid to go through some either geographical area, draw some shapes, or see some properties on the grid. There's also a split map and list button that do all of these things kind of for you as well. And of course, to bring back the search section, simply click on Expand Search Bar again. The other big thing to understand about Realist is it is a county-based system, and that's what we'll move to next. I'm searching in Cumberland County, Maine right now. As I hover over it, you see recording date, January 13th, 2026. Now, today is January 29th, 2026. So what that means for you is if any property has been sold, well, I should say, any property that's been sold whose deed has been recorded at Cumberland County after January 13th, 2026 will not show up in the system. So if a property sold basically within the last two weeks, we're probably not going to pick up that deed, that foreclosure, that mortgage, things like that. However, in the world of public records, a property selling about 2 weeks ago, getting that deed signed, getting it recorded at the county level, cotality, getting it and taking a look at it and getting it into Realist, pretty darn fast in the world of public records, I will say. Now, depending on which county you're searching in, it may be a slightly different date too. So for example, I'm just loading up a bunch of these different counties right now. And as you'll see, Cumberland County is up to date as of the 13th of January, York, the 12th, Waldo, the 11th, Sagadoc, I think so, up as the 5th, Penobscot, got that one right, as of the 19th. That's, 10 days behind the current date. By the way, if you're not if you're noticing here, you can search in up to 12 counties at one time if you'd like to. But this is just a great way to see exactly how current the data is in each and every one of your counties. So select as many or as few as you want. Looks like you could almost search the whole state if you wanted to. But we've got, again, Cumberland right now, and that's where I'll be doing my searches. Continuing on with searches, there's a quick search and there's a My Search button. As I kind of already mentioned, I think 90% of the people that use Realist come in and they're looking for one property. And if they haven't actually linked in from Flex from that particular property, they at least have an address, an owner name, a listing number, or a site/account number as well. So the individual number that each of your counties, assigns to a property. So this is a very quick, easy, what you see is what you get search. There's an address. The only thing to know about address is it's still that autocomplete. Put in 123, it'll find you all the properties in Maine that start with 123. You don't even have to be able to spell them entirely. As I put in 123, I'm about to find 194 properties in Cumberland County that start with 123. So I could do that, but we'll leave that for another time. Owner name. It's another one where honestly, leaving this starts with wildcard on or not might be something that's helpful. You might know that John Smith owns the property down the street, but it's actually the John Smith Living Trust or John Smith LLC, or Smith and Sons or something. So if you leave that starts with wildcard on, it increases the odds that you're going to find what you're looking for. When you do change it to is, it needs to be spelled exactly as it's stored in our database, which can be problematic sometimes. So I like to leave these on. The other thing to know about these search attributes is you can put in a listing number, but you can also search for a secondary listing number by hitting that plus sign. There we are. And you can add that secondary number or a third number if you want to. So you can do that for various fields. And then lastly, there's your account number. But really, that's all you need to know about doing searches in quick search anyway. Now, My Search is where if I've got some power users here, people who are looking to use Realist as a little bit more of a marketing tool, or they're looking for groups of properties, they're using it to prospect. This is a great place for you. Now, there's a drop down. There's only a couple of searches available for you. General Search and My Search Default. If you've never been in a Realist before, those are the two that are available for you. And they've got some pretty helpful things: city, zip code, land use code, bedrooms, bathrooms, among other things. But if you want to, you can create your own custom searches, and you simply do that by clicking on Custom Search. Here is where you can build off an existing search, or you can decide to create your own new search from scratch if you'd like to. You simply have to click on New Search, give it a name, and here's everything you can search on. So we try to organize it into logical sections for you, like who owns the property, where do they live full-time, where is the property physically located, how about its characteristics. Here's some of the listing information we bring in from Flex and make searchable for you: agents, dates, statuses, prices, assessment and tax, of course, sales, public record sales information, foreclosure information. There's a host of foreclosure information in Realist, and mortgage information. So with that said, you can search for a property in a certain city with a certain number of bedrooms, a certain number of bathrooms, with central air, with an annual tax below a certain amount or between a certain amount, with a specific basement and built out of brick, and you can create that own search, your own search, custom search, and save it if you want to. I'll dispense with that for right now. Just wanted to show you can create your own custom searches so you can access them again and again. Once you do, of course, they'll be available for you in this dropdown. Now, what I've done, because I want to get into the data really quickly, is I've found a sample property on 88 Codman Street. And look what I did here. It's already saved the house number and the street name in there for me. So I can save search forms. I can save search forms with data already in them. So lots of different ways to save searches, but I think I've shown you at least enough so you can understand how to create those and save those. Let's run that search. Only going to find the one property at that address. Lo and behold, it's going to put it for me here on the map. It's going to give it to me down here on the grid. Couple of dead giveaways. It's a red push pin, which means it's been sold through Maine listings at some point in the past. Another dead giveaway, we've got photos for it. And there's again that little icon that lets you know it's been sold. This is one of the first places I want to show you some integration that goes back into Flex. So I showed you how we started in Flex and went into Realist. But watch this, you can go from Realist from a listed property back into Flex if you want to. So if you click on that, it'll go back into the listing history for this property. Looks like there are several listings for this property. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So this property is sold 4 different times through Maine listings through your Flex system. And here's that entire history. So that's what we call our reverse link feature. It's how you can get from a listing back into Flex. There's even a button here on this little pop-up to do the same thing. I'll show you some other ways to do it too. But also from this pop-up, and we'll get to more about the map in a little bit, there's a report button. Down here, there's a reports button on the grid. And here you can simply just double click on the property itself on the grid. All of these things take you into what we call a property detail report. Now the map is behind us now. You know, we're opening this up and you haven't lost the map. Hit the back button. Map's still there. Everything's still there. But go into that report and think of it as opening in front of that map. This property's been listed before. So this area up at the top is going to give you information like the photos for this property. This property looks like it sold, about 2 years ago. And that means these photos are from the last time this property sold. So these photos were taken back on, you know, late 2023, early 2024. Let's see how many of them there are. Sometimes it takes a bit for them to load up because there are a lot of photos and many times for these properties. Hopefully that'll pop up here in just a second though. There they are, 37 photos, and you can scroll through them. So you can see what this property looks like, the inside, the outside, whatever's been uploaded. These are all the photos that have been uploaded by this listing agent back when this property was sold. So I can scroll through those if I want to. Got a little gallery down here too that I can go through. But I'll close out of there. Since this property's been listed, we're getting a mixture of data. Some comes from the tax roll, some comes from the listing itself. So you're getting MLS beds, MLS baths, but you're also getting building square foot, lot of square foot, you know, anything with an MLS prefix coming from the listing. You even get a sales score rating over here. We'll get into more about that in a little bit too. But then we move down into the different sections of this report. One, the owner information section. So we know that Donald Brittingham and Elizabeth Madden own this property. Another interesting thing, and this is going to be something that you'll find a lot of, their tax billing address, where they live primarily, is not the same address as this property. So we're going to assume this is a non-owner occupied property. Maybe they rent it out. Maybe it's a vacation home. Maybe it's a secondary property. You know, it's an investment property. But we'll show you, by the way, one of the search attributes you have available is to search for properties that are or are not owner occupied, because you may want to market to people like that. Moving down a little bit lower, location information, not a lot here. You know, lot, block, tax map, carrier route. Some of these things, you know, may help you search for properties, but you know, I find they're just mostly geographic location information. Coming down a little bit lower, various tax IDs, short, long, formatted, unformatted, whichever one you're searching on, there's a tax ID search attribute. We'll search all 3 of these values concurrently. So whether you're used to using the preceding zeros or not, or you want to use the long one, they're available. And you got some basic assessment information here. But as I move down lower, here's where you really get down into the assessment and taxes. 3 years worth of assessments and taxes, and the dollar and percentage change year over year. So, you know, I think Realist is very helpful, really, and you're going to start seeing some more analytics that I'm going to show you in Realist, helping you understand where are the taxes going, where are the prices going in this around this area. You know, so you're going to be able to see trends. You're going to be able to impart that knowledge to your clients too. Next, we move down to physical characteristics. This is a mixture of information that we collect from the county tax roll, but we also collect it, remember, if the property's been listed, from your listings as well. And that's what causes things like discrepancies like the one you see down here with bedrooms. Now, according to the county, this is a 4-bedroom property. According to the agent, who presumably has been into this property and taken a look at it, it's only a 3-bedroom property. Who's right, who's wrong? I'm not necessarily sure, but we show you when things just don't match. When things do match, like the year built, you can see according to the county, it's been built in 1923. According to the agent, it was built in 1923. We only really do it for a handful of fields, probably about 9 of them or so, but you can see most of them, and you can see when we kind of spell out those discrepancies, so we'll always kind of show you that. Features can be helpful sometimes, features can be not helpful sometimes. I would say this is extremely unhelpful. Usually these features will show you things, in my experience, like outbuildings. They'll show you things like porches, patios, pools, fenced-in areas, outbuildings. And they might give you information like the year they were built, the size of them, maybe even the value of them. But Q and U isn't telling me a whole lot of information here, but it may in other counties and in other cities. We then start moving into some proprietary values that Realist is going to place on these properties. The first of which is a sell score indicator. And this is a score from 0 to 1,000, indicating the relative likelihood that a property will be listed for sale in the next 6 months. This is also a searchable value for you. We'll get more into this when I start to get on the maps and doing a little bit of marketing with you and searching for properties that maybe have a high propensity to sell, because you can use this value to search. But there's also an estimated value. This is what Cotality or Realist thinks this property would sell for if it were to sell today. And we don't just give you this value. We tell you how confident we are in this value and how much we think it could deviate from the value that we give you. So that's all kind of read over here in the confidence score and the forecast standard deviation. And we explain you kind of what all those are down here. But in layman's terms, we think there's an 86% chance that this property is going to sell between plus or minus 8% of basically about $1 million and change. And here is that plus or minus 8% represented in that range, and the last time we calculated that value. So I'll point out some things. The sell score indicator, the estimated value, we're pretty good. We're one of the data leaders as far as information, tax information, and sale information, just real estate data in general. We got a pretty good idea what these estimated values are. However, you all are the experts in your area. You know what a property is going to sell for. You've got the the experience in your area. So if these are values, they're tools at your disposal. But I will point out that you can print out, you can save these reports, you can share them with your clients. And if for any reason you don't agree with some of the values or some of the numbers that we place on these properties, you've got a button up here in the upper right-hand corner next to print an email that says Customize View. So if you don't like things like, oh, here, there's a few things I'm missing, community insights, rental trends, I'm going to put those back in. So we'll go back to those. But if you don't like estimated value, if you don't like sales scores, I put a few things in, I took a few things out, I hit apply. What you'll notice is basically you can customize this report to say whatever you want. Here, I just put in rental trends, but took out estimated value. So here's what we think this property might rent for. That's another one you may want to add or remove. By the way, another one I just added. Community insights. Here's kind of where I was talking about the analytics that are available to you on this report too. Where prices are going. What's the crime risk in this area? How are the schools doing nationally on state standardized test scores? Is it a family-friendly area? Where are prices going for properties? What's the Q1 home price forecast? What I do want to point out is when you put in or remove any of these sections of these reports, that's what these reports look like all throughout history, going forward in Realist. If you take out sales score and you take out estimated value, they're gone until you decide to put them back. But the whole point is that all of these reports can be printed out or can be emailed, and you can customize how much or how little information you'd like to include in them or not. So it's all customizable by you. That's all I'm kind of trying to get out there. But there's your rental trends again. Moving away from those proprietary values and those estimated values. Here's your listing information. Remember, I went back into Flex and we saw this property been listed 4 times. Here's another place I can go back into Flex by clicking on that listing number. But here's that entire history right here. A snapshot to be sure, but you can see the prices, the original list and what was the closed prices and among other things. So you've got most of what you need right here. And then we move off of your listing data and into sales history from the county. So here is the entire sales history we have for this property, dating all the way back, in this case, to 2014. This property originally sold for $375,000 when the Nelsons sold it to James and Yvonne. Then it looks like something along these lines, we'll pick up arm's length transactions and non-arm's length transactions. So it looks like the property was transferred from at least one of their names into a living trust, and we'll pick those up. Those are nominal sales, non-arm's length transactions. And then that trust sold to Donald and Elizabeth in 24 for $990,000. That's a tidy little profit to make in 10 years. You got to love the fact that your property values are going up that much here in Portland. And then we've got your mortgage history. So when this property was purchased in 2014 for $375,000, a mortgage was taken out on that same day for $300,000. Now, granted, these are mortgage originations only. We don't have any remaining balance information, but you do have the interest rate, you do have the term. With a little bit of detective work, you can probably figure out the equity history in this house. I'm assuming this property was bought in cash by Donald and Elizabeth because there's no associated mortgage, or at least maybe it was a private mortgage. But you got your mortgage history down there too. 2 maps now as well, showing you the estimated lot lines. I find these really helpful when it comes to irregular lots. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, 50 by 145. However, don't forget, those are estimated. In fact, sometimes if you're gonna find your actually legally accepted lot dimensions, you might find them up here in this characteristics section, although I don't see them right now. And then there's another map that lets you know where the property is located in terms of, major cross streets, bodies of water, among other things. That is your flagship report in Realist. That's the one you're going to spend the most time on. That's the one that's going to tell you all about the property that you're interested in. Let's move through the rest of these reports so you can kind of see what else we can take a look at around the neighborhood. Now, you've got a CMA in Flex. You've got a comparables report. However, here's a very basic one in Realist. I will say that the benefit of the one in Realist, and I can't speak for the one in Flex, not being a Flex professional, but it's a very easy one here. And not only that, but it will also come up with properties that haven't necessarily been listed through the MLS, because remember, we're picking up all kinds of sales here in Realist, whether or not they were ever processed through Flex or through Maine listings. So if these were ever sold privately or anything like that, we'll pick them up. In the case of this CMA, I'm not seeing any of those. Every single one of these has a little sold icon, which means all of these were listed through the MLS. But you'll also notice, simply by clicking on that comparable button, I came up with 11 different comps. Now, I may look at this and go, well, number 11 and number 8 are kind of on the wrong sides of the tracks down there. So maybe we'll take that one out and we'll take that one out. You may look at things like, oh, price per square foot. You've got all kinds of information out here to the right that's going to allow you to decide whether or not you want to include or exclude any of the original 11 properties that were returned as comps in your final comp report. Here's one that sold for $1.3 million. That seems rather high. I'll take that one out. Here's one that sold for $515,000. That seems rather low. I'll take that one out. So now, just checking, kind of looking along between these 11, I'm down to 7 now. Once I've got the 7 and I'm kind of excited about them and I think this is a good group of comparables, I can come up here and click on generate report. Oh, before I get to that, you may ask why these 11 properties came up, right off the bat. So let me back up. Let me rewind a little bit. Search criteria. And by the way, search criteria is going to be available on almost all these reports that you look at too, because there's always some underlying defaults. But why did I come up with these 11 comps? Search criteria will give you the answer to that question. I asked to find 20 comps. I can set this to find fewer or more. I sorted them by distance from subject, closest to furthest. There are other ways I can search. Here are things that I can include on this report: real AVM, values, images. I like to leave all these on. The rest really have to do with, physical characteristics of these comps. Should they have a pool or not? If you're comping a property and it does have a pool, you might want to ensure that other properties you return as comps also have a pool. How far away should I go from my subject property to find these comps? Should I narrow it down by sale price, year built, bedrooms or bathrooms? We've got free-form entry boxes. We've got drop downs, set a high, set a low and no high, set a high and no low, totally up to you. And then you can find properties in a specific geographic boundary. You can also go as far back from the recording date or sales date as far as 12 months from the current date, from the date of the sale of the property. If that's not enough for you, you can use a date range. As you can see, there's already some information entered here. If you wanted to go back, if you're an appraiser and you want to go back and see years worth of comparables, you can use this date range and go back for years and find comps. I'm just going to go back 9 months from the sale date of this property. And then, of course, you'll also be able to make sure that these properties stay within a specific threshold, square footage wise, of the home or of the lot the home sits on. This way, if I'm comping, for example, up here, a 1,000 square foot home, I would not return any comps larger than 1,200 or smaller than 800 square feet, plus or minus 20% of 1,000 square feet, for example. You can also not worry about that, none. You can set your own square footage with a drop down or free-form entry. Lot area, I've set to none. If I'm comping a property on a 1/10 of an acre parcel right now, I could return a comp up the street on a 10-acre parcel or down the street on an even smaller parcel. So set those if you want to keep them within a specific threshold. Land use code, I always say same as subject as a default. If you're comping a single family residential home, odds are you're going to want to return other single family residential homes as comps, not condos or something else. Style is one I recommend people stay away from. Not every county collects information on the style of a home. So if you're looking for a Cape Cod or you're looking for a cabin up there in the woods to comp to a cabin that you're selling, if the county doesn't collect that, Realist doesn't get it. If Realist doesn't get it and you're searching by it, you could find no comps, so careful on that one. And then you could submit this for just one comp report or save it as a default going forward for all your comp reports. But I made no changes, so I'll leave that alone. Okay, sorry to backtrack on you there, but at this rate, we've got my 7 selected. Once I'm happy, I can go ahead and click on Generate Report. And when I do click on Generate Report, here's your comp report itself. Subject property, my surrounding comps, all numbered. The search criteria I use to find these comps, some summary statistics, and then subject property on the left, comps 1, 2, 3, 4, out to the right. There's an arrow because I know I've got 7 comps, and I can go all the way out to see the 7th. Everything lined up in a nice column and row format. We're going to search tax and MLS values concurrently. So if you're only looking for 2-bedroom properties, this property would have showed up. If you're only looking for 3-bedroom properties, this property also would have showed up. You get a little slider down here at the bottom, so you can kind of compare back and forth. And you can, of course, print or email this to anybody or go back and edit the report. That's your comparables report. What I'm going to move to next is a neighbors report. Neighbors report is extremely similar to the comparables report, at least in its output. It looks exactly the same. Map up here at the top, neighbors down here at the bottom. What you might notice is it's simply finding your physically closest nearby neighbors. That's it. I think it's more of a buyer's tool than anything else. If you've got someone who's looking to buy this property on 88 Codman, and they want to see how long some of the neighbors have lived there or what their assessments are or what their taxes are. It's kind of your nosy neighbors report, for lack of a better term, but it does tell you everything you need to know about your nearby neighbors. Anything can be changed about what you find on this report by clicking on search criteria. Pretty simple though. How many neighbors you'd like to find, up to 30, view is 1, how far away you'd like to go to find them, and whether or not you want to keep them on the same street, the same subdivision, or just no preference and find all the physically closest properties right around your home. That's a neighbors report. What we're going to move to next is some more trend data and a little bit more analytic data as it pertains to some of the census data, neighborhood profile too. But we'll move over to market trends first. This looks a lot like what we showed you on the dashboard. It's just for a much smaller area, not the entire county, but really more just this zip code in the city. So the number of closed sales, the average sale price, all things that you're used to seeing. Now, remember, we're showing you the 5-year average on all of these stats from November, since that's the last date. In many cases, we're able to collect all this data and get it in here. Some of it's December too, but just pay attention to the headers down here at the bottom. But these are the 5-year averages. We then get 12-month rolling periods in the 3 geographic areas where the property is located. So this property on Codman is in Cumberland County, it's in South Portland, and it is in the 04103 zip code, all of which are represented here on these lines. Not only are we looking at these for sales that were processed through your MLS, we can look at these for all sales, regardless of whether or not they were published or processed through the MLS. So you got MLS, and you can toggle over to tax, with the exception of something like average sale to original list price ratio, which of course is only coming from MLS stats. Price per square foot, trending downwards a little bit. Number of sales, not surprisingly, spiking in the summer, going down in the winter. Change in sales activity month over month. So just great information. By the way, you can go through historically and look at other dates or other years if you want to. But if you've got a client saying, why are we listing my property at this price? Why are we putting in a bid for a property at this price? Well, you're going to be able to show them that you've got the data backing up why we're going to be listing those properties, why we're going to be doing those things, because you can see exactly where those trends are going. So that's all market trends. We'll get even deeper into that in a minute. Neighborhood profile is going to show you demographically, that's the word I was searching for earlier, what's going on in this property, in this neighborhood. Estimated population, growth, density, household stats, population distribution by age, by gender, by marital status. This is all US Census data. Housing stats, median year built, median home sale price, how many homes are owned or rented. Of the people that are renting, what are they paying for properties of various sizes? Where do people work? Household income, commute method, weather in the area, what sort of level of education have people attained in this area? All census data. We then move out of census data into information about nearby schools and nearby businesses. And let me yet again point out the search criteria button. This is where you can decide how far away you want to go and how many businesses per category and what business categories you want to return in this report. Same for schools. How far, what type, public or private, what level of schools, all can be changed by you here in the search criteria section. But that way you're going to be able to see here's all the public schools. Students per teacher. We do partner with great schools. They give us the ratings based on how the kids did on their state standardized test scores the year previous. And there are also places that you can go out to the great schools websites where if you're a student or a previous student or a teacher or a parent, and you can rate these schools based on the stars here, as you can see. So here's all your middle schools, and here's all your private schools, which of course are not subject to the same sort of test taking or community rating. And here's your local businesses broken down by sections. Attractions, banks, places to eat and drink. We'll always give you the address, the phone number, how far away it is from your property, and exactly what it is too. So just great information for, again, people that may necessarily want to live near specific places like schools or businesses. Next, we'll move into the flood map. Flood map is its own thing. I'll show you that there's a flood map overlay too. And I'm also going to start to get into some additional reports that are, I guess I'll say, pay to play too. So this is your free flood zone report. Now I think we're on the kind of the back cove here. Looks like no real flooding problems here, but you're near a large body of water, so you should watch out. But again, there we are. There's some flooding over here, maybe in, I think this is sort of I forget what neighborhood this is, but here you can see where there is some flooding. By the way, hold down Control and click. Oh, I'll show you that in a minute too. But this is in the X500 zone, so you can see where all the flood zones are. This property clearly not within that flood zone. Now moving down lower, there's a premium flood map. It does cost $9.99, as do most of the rest of the reports that I'm going to show you. These are cost ones that we pass on to you, and they are per property. I'll download a sample report so you can see what you get. I'm not trying to nickel and dime you or sell you anything you don't want, but you may be in an area that's prone to flash flooding, and if your clients are concerned about that, this might be worth that $10 piece of mind. You'll get a standard flood map, which I've already shown you, but you'll also get a premium flood map, and this will give you a flood risk score, and you'll also get a flash flood risk score too, among other information that we collect on flood information from FEMA and other sources. So if you've got someone who's a little bit worried about flood, by the way, there's a glossary down here too that explains to you what everything is. But you do get additional information in this flood report if you want to. So that's available for you. In that same grain, there is a hazards and risks report too. I'll download a sample version of that report. These sample reports are, of course, just in areas not pertinent to you. This one's in Laguna Beach, California. But you'll get things like the crime risk score, an earthquake risk score, not too big of an earthquake risk score in Maine. Tornadoes, also probably not that big of a deal. Straight line wind, hurricanes, possibly. Wildfire risk, depending on where you are, absolutely. And distance from fire station. This is what you'll generally get. This one is kind of showing you everything. If it's not pertinent to your area, things like earthquakes or other things, you won't see it. But here's your hazards and risks report as it pertains to crime. You get your own little kind of map there, heat map, as you do for earthquakes, as you would for wind and storm. Also, wildfire risk. You'll also get information about distance to recent burns if there has been a fire nearby. Distance to fire station. We do this all over, including in Hawaii and Alaska. So we've got things like tsunamis, sinkholes, lava flows, none of which is probably going to be an issue for you folks in Maine. And the age of your roof, always important. So that's your hazard and risk report. Again, download samples of these reports. You can see what you're going to get. The other two that I do like, and this kind of is in keeping with some of the market trends I was showing you. I've been showing you market trends, and they're those basic charts, and you can move a few things around. Premium neighborhood reports get extremely granular. So this is another one, and I'll download trends and forecasts. This is the one I kind of like to look at the most. I think it's one of the more helpful, but we've got schools, we've got real estate, we've got economics and demographics. If any of those sound interesting to you, feel free to download them. But again, you've potentially got someone who's saying, why are we listing my property at this level? Or why are we putting in a bid on this home at this point? Well, we will allow you to download these per property, and it'll be a very unique area. It'll be an area that is pertinent to this particular home. It'll be a small neighborhood, not a huge zip code or a huge city. And you're going to get forecasts and trends. Where have the values of these properties been over the past 20 years? Where do we anticipate them going? And then how do things compare to what's been going on nationally? Over the past 3 years, compared to the metro, compared to the United States as a whole, how are we trending? And where are we going to go? And what's causing these prices to be higher or lower? Is there high crime? Is the school performance not so good? Is the look of the neighborhood and feel not so great, or is it really good? What else is going on? How many good high-paying jobs are there within an hour? Home ownership trend, is that increasing or is that decreasing? Are rents going up or are rents going down? Where's crime going? Let's see, how's school performance doing? What are the economic trends in the neighborhood? These are all leading indicators that are going to let you know where property values are going. If you're looking for something to back up your assertions that this is what we should list a property for, or this is what this property is worth, this is a great place to go. So I'm not going to waste your time by going through every single one of these. Download some sample reports, you'll get an idea, and you'll be able to see that you may find these helpful. Another one that I think is very helpful in certain cases, building permits. You may walk into a property, and by the way, this property has no building permits. There are none, so it's unavailable. But I can download a sample report and show you, you might walk into a property and see that, oh boy, there's been something added onto this home. It looks there's a bedroom or that's been added onto this property, and boy, does it look like it was permitted? I can't really tell. So you go to this home in Realist, and you'd go to your building permits report, and you'd be able to see, was there a permit that was applied for? When was it issued? What was the value of the job? What was it for? Was it a fence? Did someone add a bathroom? Did someone add a bedroom? Who's the contractor that did the work, and how do I contact them to find out more about it? So all great information that you have available to you here. But that's really it for reports. Don't forget, you've got, whoops, let me go back there. You've got tons of stuff. Only that stuff at the end I was showing you, is that extra cost to you, those premium neighborhood reports, those hazards and risks, those building permits, the advanced flood map, but they can be helpful in the right situation. By the way, you can favorite these properties or not favorite these properties just by clicking this star up here, and it adds them up here to your favorite properties, by the way. But let's go spend some time on the maps. This is where I kind of like to get into some marketing. So what I'm going to show you real quick, I'm going to set up a hypothetical situation we're going to say I just sold this property here on Codman, and we're near the water, get high dollar for these properties. They're great. I want to sell more properties in this neighborhood, and I know this neighborhood really well. I've got expertise here. So I want to do a just sold mailing to drum up some more business. I'm going to let people know I just sold this property, and hey, if you need to sell your property and you live in this neighborhood, give me a call. We're going to send out like a postcard or something else. An easy way to do that is, first of all, you could search, by subdivision or a zip code. Subdivision, let me click on this one for a minute. This is actually a pretty good one. I click on subdivision and it doesn't come up right away. It's a lookup table. So if I put in the word, for example, heights, it'll find me all of the subdivisions that have the word heights in them. And sometimes there can be different sections, different filings. Like we've got Warwick number 1, Warwick number 2, Warwick number 3. So it's a good way to find them in many cases. But aside from that, if I don't want to use a geographic area to search in, I can simply draw a shape. So I've got drawing tools up here at the top of my map, and I could draw a circle, rectangle, polygon, because maybe I don't want to go west of Ocean Avenue. I don't want to go north of Chenry Street. I don't want to go, of course, out into the water here. But as you can see, I can draw my own very unique shape, and it will only search for properties within the confines of the shape that I just drew. So I'm about to find 150 properties in that area. Now, some of those people might have just bought their property last week, last month. Why are they going to list their property with me any point in the future? It's a waste of my postage. Let's narrow down some of these people by using a cell score. And rather than put in a range, I can just say, let's find everybody that has a higher cell score than 600, relatively high. You're going to throw out all the people that aren't so great. I went from 150 people down to 58. So now in this shaded area, I am looking for all the people with a cell score of more than 600. I just found all of them. They're also down here on the grid. I can then do something like, let's go through these and I look at some of them. Oh, there's an expired, maybe that's a good one. This one's actively listed for sale. They've already got a realtor. Maybe I'll take that one out. That's a waste of my time, maybe. And then when I'm ready, press on the labels button down here at the bottom. And provided you have one of these Avery label formats somewhere sitting in your desk collecting dust, 3 across 10 downs, 2 across 10 downs, 2 across 7 downs, you can choose any of them or go out to Office Depot and buy them. But you can print out mailing labels for people who are not necessarily living in these properties, but are the people that own these properties, regardless of whether or not they live in them. So tax billing address is what I recommend most of the time if you're looking to reach the owners of these homes. We'll pull the owner names directly off the deeds. Now, as you've seen, deeds can say things like LLC, trust, this, that, and the other thing. Maybe you just want to generically put in a custom label, dear homeowner, or you could put in the name and or current resident. We can include foreign addresses. We can eliminate duplicate labels. If you come across a landlord, that owns multiple properties, a builder that owns multiple properties, we will not print out 7 labels to send to that person for all 7 properties they own. We'll just print out 1. You are each allowed 5,000 exports per person per month, and they reset at the beginning of each month. Now I hit create. They will open up in a rich text.rtf file format. If you use Word, it'll open in Word. WordPerfect, Pages, it'll open in all of them. But simply by drawing a shape, finding some properties with a cell score of higher than 600, I've now printed myself out a bunch of labels. Now, what you'll also find as we scroll down here, some people are on what we call the do not mail list. And you see how they say no mail next to their address? Be careful. By the way, I'll show you where there's a filter that you can filter these out. But this person has registered with the Direct Marketing Association and said, I do not want to receive any sort of solicitation that has been pulled from public records. So we can filter those out. If you don't filter them out, they still say no mail when you print them out. So now not only are you letting someone know that you're mailing them on the no mail list, you can see that they know that you know, if that makes sense. And then moving down lower, you'll find people anywhere, whether they're in Wesley Hill, Massachusetts, or whether there's somebody in California. There's a couple of those in here somewhere. But that's printing out mailing labels. Don't want to print out mailing labels? Want to export this information into a spreadsheet? That's down here under the export button. Quick export is what you see is what you get. All the properties you have checked, all the headers you currently see on your grid right now, that's what we'll print. Customize allows you to create your own custom export, and you can export up to 123 fields of data. Yet again, organized into logical sections like who owns it, where it's located, taxes, and other things. In my case, what I did is I went into owner information, and all that information that I placed on a mailing label, I have now taken it and saved it as a template called owner mailing exports. You can create your own custom exports. You can save templates of exports if you want to as well. There's all my information in the order that I want it to. I'm going to export it. It's going to open up in a CSV format, comma separated values. And mine's going to open up in Excel. So now everything you saw in my labels is here in a spreadsheet. First name, last name, capitalized, not capitalized, where these people live full time, whether or not they're owner occupied homes, whether or not they're on the do not mail list. It's all here. You could send this off to a mailing house. They'll do your mailings for you. You could do a mail merge. Dear Aaron Mooney at 60 Codman Street. You know, we see you took out a mortgage back in 2022 and it's got a really high rate. Maybe it's time to refi. You know, there's all kinds of ways that you can play with these things. And if you're an Excel wizard, goodness, you know, you could export sale prices and mortgages and foreclosures or anything else you want to and run pivot tables on them. So that's just kind of showing you how you get information out of Realist. I think I showed you that you could print or email any of the reports that I showed you a minute ago. In fact, let me just go back to that for a minute. You can always print a report you're on right now or a group of reports. And don't forget, you can decide to hide or show as much information as you want to in each one of them using that customize view button. So you can print as PDFs or email anything you want to from these reports. Then as I got out here to the grid and did some searching, I showed you how to print out mailing labels. I showed you how to export data into spreadsheets. And then lastly, you can also print or email reports, the map, the table, just the map, just the table, or a card view. So basically almost anything you see in Realist can be printed out as a PDF or an image file and sent out. All right, now I'll show you a couple other cool buttons. Clear all. Clear all gets rid of everything in my search boxes, everything in my grid, and everything on my map. So that's an easy way to erase everything if you want to. All right, next, let's move to some other fun things on the map. Drawing shapes, I think you've seen. By the way, you can draw up to 5 shapes at once. The biggest shape you can draw is roughly about 7 square miles. Can't draw anything bigger than that. By the way, you can draw these shapes. You can save these shapes with your saved searches too. You can even call it, you know, whoops, gotta highlight that. My, you know, search shape or something like that, and save it in conjunction with these searches. So you can actually draw shapes, save them with those. Getting rid of them is easy, just delete them. And you can draw up to 5 shapes at one time. So that's everything under shapes. Next, let's show you some boundaries. Neighborhood boundaries. Those are pretty good in your more highly populated urban areas. They are not so good once you get outside those highly populated urban areas, as you can see. Lots of others though. Zip codes, those are in blue. Cities are in green. You can put lots of them on the map at one time. I find the map gets rather busy once you get, you know, 2 or 3 things put on there. It's tough to see. The ones I find helpful, school district boundaries. So you can see what schools these properties are zoned for. For example, everyone here in Portland is going to Casco Bay High School. Also the last one, flood zone. Here's where you can really get down into the interactive flood zones. You know, you can see whether or not properties are intersected by multiple flood zones. Hold down Control and click, and you will be able to see from FEMA that panel and the last date they updated that panel too. So flood zones all found here underneath boundaries. Next, Premium map features. You may have seen them over here on my searches, and you may see them here on the map. They're only available, by the way, on my search. They go away with quick search. Got to be on my search. That's what allows them to show. Let me go to a much more interesting area. Here we go. How about the East End? And what I can show you here is you can see things like, and I'll do it from the search, the building type. Which ones are single family residential homes? Which ones are condos? Which ones are townhouses? You could look at the last time these properties sold, what did they sell for? So again, anything in sort of blue is kind of, high. Anything sort of in reds and oranges, kind of low sale prices. You can see whether or not these homes are or are not owner occupied. Anything in green is owner occupied. Anything in gray is non-owner occupied. So these are great ways to look at individual parcels and be able to see, hey, how long have people lived in these properties? How long did they live there? For 5 to 10 years, 15 to 20? Gives you an idea as to what's going on these individual parcels. So those are your premium map features. Next, what we've also got is things like distressed properties. So if you want to see what's going on in a particular neighborhood, let me see, I think I should go back to kind of where I was before rather than the East End here. I was on the back cove. I think there were a couple of things going on over here. Here we are. Here's a property that's in foreclosure. It is in what we call pre-foreclosure. So as I take a look at this one, there is an additional tab now for this property because there has been something that's going on with it. And we've collected this from a document. And the document we collected it from was a list pendants that was filed back in September of 2025. And here's the borrower, the trustee address, the mortgage information, and the foreclosure history for this home. Another great way to look for foreclosures. Create yourself a little foreclosure search. So if you want to find, for example, properties that are scheduled to go to auction, which is what happens after they're in pre-foreclosure, I can search for them across the entire county if I want to. And now let's see, I've got some here on the grid. I can double click on this one here on Bird Avenue. This one is also, again, scheduled to go to auction. I can click on the foreclosure tab. And now you can see when and where this property was scheduled to go to auction. Now we missed it, it was back in July of 2025, but I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that that is your county courthouse in Portland. And there's the opening bid amount, and there's the foreclosure history. Other things that you can kind of find on the map too. Let's scroll back down into the, where was I? the back cove, thank you. But as I move down there, there's a couple of other properties, I think just a little bit south of here. Let's see if I find anything. Here's one. Here's what we call a bank-owned sale. This isn't necessarily something that we've collected from a document. This is where we're looking at the sales records for these properties. And we're thinking that Sarah purchased this from a bank or some sort of entity. And let's see if we're right. Go down to the sales history. Sarah bought this property from somebody called RMAC Trust Series 2016 CTT. That sounds to me a lot like a bank of some sort. So she probably got a great deal on that property. And lo and behold, yep, there was a foreclosure on this property very recently. So it's just another good way to find properties that may have some sort of, distressed sale associated with them. All right, scrolling back down. I will go ahead and turn off all the boundaries. By the way, I'll turn off the foreclosures. Easy to do down here on the legend too. You just turn them off right here. If you'd like to know, for example, where all the properties that sold according to the county over the past 3 months are, that's not a lot. Let's move that up to maybe like 9 months. Those are all sales that have occurred, not necessarily through Maine listings. If you want to find everything that's sold through Maine listings, among other statuses, active, pending, expired, sold, here's all your inventory in this neighborhood. Anything in red has been sold in the past 3 months. Anything in purple is expired. Anything in orange is pending. Anything in green is active. So it's just great ways that you can find things on the map. By the way, I don't know if I've showed you this. Maybe I guess I have a couple of times, but don't forget, you can just turn this into a hybrid map. You may say to yourself, every day, I drive past, a vacant piece of land. Let's see if I can find anything, I don't know. But at any rate, you can find almost anything you want to. So as long as you kind of hover over here and you can find a property, all you have to do is click on it and you can see who owns it. Claire and Luke own that property. Here's a bunch of condos over here. PVA, not sure what that ownership is. But you can find, here's a common area, for example. Hey, who owns this actually, maybe there's a house there. Oh no, that's a common area. It's owned by the city of Portland. So these are just great ways to find these homes. Again, just click on the rooftops. I can just switch back from a terrain to a satellite to a road map if I want to. And let's see what else we can show you here. Aside from MLS statuses, property characteristics. What are the bedroom and bathroom counts on all these properties? So without me having to dig deeper into these property detail reports, I can already see if my client's looking for only 4-bedroom properties, I've only got, a few things that I can be able to look at in this neighborhood for them. And, again, you can do that for all kinds of things. What's the square footage of the home? That can be placed on these things too. Who are the owners? So those are things we can put on individual parcels. Now, when it comes to sort of a 30,000 foot view, we can do things like see trends. So what's the sales activity in this general area by zip code? Your cooler colors, lower levels of sales. Your warmer colors, higher levels of sales, all by zip code, as you can kind of see. I can actually aggregate them by neighborhood if I want to too, but of course, they're only going to work really well in the areas where we have those neighborhood boundaries, of course. But those are your different trends that we can look at. Scrolling back down into Portland, if you need to see, for example, where the banks or the schools or the places to eat and drink are, we will plot them for you on the map and allow you to find out exactly what they are. If you need some your Colombian food fix, or you want to know where Burger King is, or any schools nearby. Those are all coming in from Google Maps, by the way. Driving directions, not too exciting. 123 Main Street in somewhere in Maine, Freeport, to how about 123 Main Street in Maine in Auburn. How long is it going to take me to get from Freeport to Auburn? It's going to take me about 30 minutes. And here are my turn-by-turn directions that I can clear out, or I can email to client if I want to as well. So you can kind of see exactly how it's going to take you from point A to point B. Another one I like, locate on map. I like this one because it's helpful. I can put an address in here, but you can search for an address over here. What locate on map lets you do is, maybe I've got someone who wants to live near a lake or a river or a park or the University of Maine. It'll find things like that. It'll find geographically interesting places that aren't necessarily able to be found by an address if you don't have it. So that's another thing you can do. Measurement tool, pretty straightforward. What's the difference? What's the length between point A and point B? And you can delete that line. You can annotate the map. As I've mentioned, you can print out this map. And before that, you can even annotate the map. Here's the university. And you can annotate the map, and what you see is what you get when you print that map out. All right, with that said, we're in the home stretch here, folks, so hang with me. I'll have you out of here probably in about the next 5-10 minutes. Might go over just a minute. But let's do a search for all the Wilkinses. I just want to kind of fill up this grid and point out that when you find a property on the grid, as long as you click it on the grid, it pops up right to the top on the map. So easy way to find things. When I make Realist one big list, it goes into this card view. This card view kind of goes into the responsive design nature of Realist. Because now if I shrink down Realist to something, let's say the size of my phone, I can still do a search. I can still find all my listed properties, but they're now in this card view. Imagine just swiping up and down with your finger, and then eventually finding the property you're interested in, giving it a tap. And where are we now? We are on a property detail report, where you get things like your owner information, your community insights, your location, your tax information, everything I showed you earlier. The tabs have now disappeared. That's because they're up here. The navigation has changed a little bit. You can still get to any of those other tabs. By the way, if I make things a little bit wider, all of a sudden, boom, tabs come back. Maybe you're on a tablet. But when you're on a phone, things change. But see how everything snaps to? Nothing disappears. It all kind of just squeezes in exactly how it needs to based on the size of your screen. That's how that responsive design nature works. You can favorite these properties from here also. You can customize what shows up on the cards by clicking on customize cards. We always give you the status, the price, the square footage, but this stuff in here can be customized. So if you want to say, I don't care whether or not these properties are owned or occupied, I want to know right off the bat how many half baths they have, and hit apply. And now you'll see all the half bath counts on all those properties. Toggling between grid and cards is easy. Upper right-hand corner, go from card view to list view. Let's go through a little bit of things on list view. First of all, you've got columns of data that all go all the way out here to the right. So take a look at what you want to. Move things where you like them. Want the sales score over here on the other side of sale price or the county on the other side of sale price? Click and drag. Want to sort things by sales score? Click on sales score. It'll sort them ascending or descending. Couple of columns that don't have headers. Listing indicators. This is an expired listing. This is a sold listing. Photo indicators. This lets you know if we have photos of the properties. Foreclosure stage lets you know if there's a foreclosure flag, and that colored corresponding flag will show up here. A couple other things you can do under Customize Table. If you want to add or remove a column, click on Show Hide Columns. Maybe I don't want the town name in there, and I want sale price to be over here. You can click and drag. You can check or uncheck. You can X them out. You can customize your own grid to your heart's content. Add as many fields as you like, up to 30, I should say, and move them however you like them to. A couple other things under Customize Table. Let's say if I only check a couple properties that I'm interested in, I can show only the ones that I've checked and get rid of the rest, or bring that list back. And lastly, I can only see about 16 properties on this grid. If I want to see more, try compact mode. Harder to read, more to see, or go back to default mode. That's everything you needed to know about the grid. All right, we're going to finish up here with some housekeeping items, folks. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to click on the gear icon up here. There's a couple things you can do under settings. Number one, under search, if you only find one property, we'll automatically open up a property detail report for you. Here is where, when you check this box, you are allowing yourself to print out properties as labels that are on the no mail list. That's why we were getting those no mail ones. Uncheck this property, you are filtering those properties out. They will not print. The number of search results you can ever max that you can return in any given search, 3,000. Under your reports, remember how we went through all the behind the scenes sort of defaults for my comparables report and for my neighbors report and for my neighborhood profile report. This is just another place you can change those. I've also pointed out repeatedly how you can email things directly out of Realist as PDF attachments. When you do that, you may want to set up your email signature. Just a basic text editor, even though it kind of looks like you can click on that. I just made it underlined and blue. But easy for you to change your text size, font size, anything else. You want your name to be real big, real small. You can change those things. Other than that, I'm gonna probably here let you go. But before I do, I just spewed a lot of information at you over the past hour and 15 minutes. I'm sure you'll remember all of it. You will get a copy of this recording afterwards. But even if you don't remember all of it, please remember there's a question mark icon up here at the very top. And there are a lot of different sections, but I just click on Go to User Guide. It opens up in a whole new window. You don't have to be logged into Realist to go here. So you can save this as a default or as a favorite page if you want to. But if you're still feeling kind of sketchy about using Realist, you're not sure, click on Getting Started. Here's finding your way around Realist, setting your user preferences. Feeling more advanced or thinking to yourself, hey, that guy showed me how to print out mailing labels, but I can't remember how to do it anymore. We'll go here to Features Guide and go down to creating mailing labels, go ahead and click on it. Here's where we'll walk you through how to create mailing labels. Don't want to read, like to watch videos? Go to tutorials. And here are tutorials on absolutely everything I've showed you and other things that you may not even necessarily have available to you. But if you want to learn more about those building permits, or if you want to learn how to print out mailing labels or anything else, there's tons of videos. We've even got them for you on YouTube if you want to go out to YouTube and take a look at them too. But with that said, folks, I am done with today's demo. I kept you a couple extra minutes, so thank you for those of you who are hanging out with me. We are giving another one of these next week. It's going to be specific to printing out mailing labels and using some of the other sort of prospecting tools that I showed you. So we're going to really kind of focus in on those and do a session that's much shorter than this, probably about 30, 45 minutes or so. But I'll go over all the marketing tools for you again too, and that's coming up next week. With that said, I don't see any questions, but I do appreciate you all coming out. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and wish you all a good upcoming weekend, and wish you all good luck with using Realist, which again is much more than just a tax and public record system. As you can see, it's such a great tool for marketing, for research, for doing all kinds of things. But thanks again, everybody. Hope you enjoy the new tool we showed you how to use today, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.